But in terms of environment, it's absolutely influential, right? What I will say though, I do not believe that it's not all or nothing. So someone that, and I know many people that say I'm not, I'm abstinent from XYZ, or I'm alcohol free for 2 years. I do not believe in all or nothing. All or nothing fuels addiction and creates resistance. Anytime you're in resistance, you are not in control. You are not free. You are a captive and a slave to that belief system that you're telling yourself that you cannot have.
And welcome back to the Money, the Mindset, and the Mentoring podcast. Today we have Patrick Jones with us of Heal Your Addiction. And Patrick, when I went to what you had talked about in one of your videos, I thought it was one of the most, so first of all, kudos to you for making such absolutely amazing content. And it was one of those things where I couldn't stop watching the video. I thought it was a great video in the way that you presented things. And so I thought, man, you got to come on and talk about this, because I think it's a really important thing for us to chat about. So thank you for being here.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it is an important thing, especially in the business, success, entrepreneur space. It's something that I think is not talked about enough. This world of secret addictions that have control and power over us. And we pretend that they don't, because we get something from them, right? So this conversation, I think,
totally
is a needed conversation.
I think, there's so many things that we do in the day that we don't realize we're doing it because we're in control, or we're doing it because we're not in control, and sort of being able to identify that, because everything else is going well. Like what you're telling me is, when you say successful entrepreneurs, they're going through something, everything's going great except for that one thing. And so kind of talk a little bit about that. Like how does somebody kind of get onto that idea?
Yeah. So it's like this, right? So on paper, and especially with social media, with the way we show the world, the way we want to show them, everything looks good on paper. You got the money, you got the business, got the success. That's all you see in social media. But deep down inside, there's emotional addiction, there's mental addiction, there's some type of block, right? And they go to something, or have a pattern, an addictive pattern they go to feel in control of their emotions and their thoughts and their feelings. And so it can become destructive. And so with that, it's really getting clear and with yourself. And this is part of the summits we're going to get into, but really it's confronting the truth.
And when you look at that, you said emotional addiction and you said mental addiction. You didn't say physical addiction. Why is that?
Yeah. Most of my addiction was the underlining cause was never the physical substance. I was never addicted to the substance. I was addicted to numbing myself, but deep down below that, I was addicted to shame, to guilt, and these disempowering feelings. And until I actually solved and went deeper to what's causing this, right? What's causing me to binge eat, the food addiction, nicotine addiction, what's underneath that, right? That's just the symptom, but the cause is how you heal, if that makes sense. So I had to get deeper into that. That's why the physical addiction, it could be sex, drugs, porn, alcohol, anything. Overworking. I can't tell you how many times years ago I would obsess with overworking and pretend it was an addiction. It was an addiction. And it was an addiction the moment I realized it had power over me, and it impacted my children. It impacted my relationships. And like I said, I had to confront the truth that this is actually destructive and something needs to change if I'm willing to change.
Some people would believe to be a positive addiction, and how in fact that maybe couldn't be. You talk about work ethic, you talk about, any of the big things, fitness, eating, all of these things that could be a positive thing, but it actually spins as a negative, that it's an addiction. What does that look like?
Yeah, for sure. So I'll tell you, I remember, multiple times in my life, I just remember working at a job. This was maybe 15 years ago. And inside there, my addiction, my main one was food. So I would eat a lot of food and I'd feel bad about it. I'd feel shame. And then all of a sudden my mind went to exercise, meaning I had to exercise in order to work off those calories. So I would go to the gym after the episode, maybe it's 10 p.m. at night. And I did it because I felt that was the way to control, right? But it was healthy. Exercise is healthy. It's good for your body, good for your mind, good for your immune system. But I was controlled by that thought that the exercise is going to actually free me. And so I feel good to pretend that I don't have a problem. So many people, they use exercise or work to mask, right, the real problem that's going on. So, and I, you and I talked about this. There's addictions that are healthy, that are positive, right? I'm addicted to a lot of things right now. My biggest addiction is right now is helping other people and getting my message out and sharing that anything is possible, right? That you can move past where you are and you can get to the next level. I'm addicted to that, but it's healthy. When it's not healthy is when it controls you. When it controls your thoughts, it controls your emotions, it controls your actions on a daily basis, and it impacts your life. And so what we talked about, and I'll share, is writing down all the things inside your life, right, that are essentially you believe are obsessions and addictions, right? When you have a list of those things, circle the ones that are destructive and have an impact and actually impacting other people, your finances, your relationships. Which ones of those do you feel you do not have any control over? And that's when you know it's a destructive pattern. It's just a pattern, right? That can be solved, that you can move past and move it into a commitment and not an addiction. So again, you want to move it from addiction
I like that.
into
I like the
a
idea
commitment.
that it's definitely a branding strategy around how your brain looks at something, in the sense of, if it's a commitment, it means you're the one who's actually making the decision to move forward with whatever you're doing, and you're making that actively. Whereas where it's an addiction, the decision is being made by the activity or by the substance or by the, whatever else it is, the external forces making that. And so, like, I'm addicted to paying tax, but, but I, on other sides, I'm committed to my kids. And so those are two very different things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Totally. Right. And you know what the way you actually stop an addictive pattern in the moment is?
I'd like to know.
Want to know what it is? Yeah. Stopping and pausing and tracking somatically what's happening on your body, inside your body. Right. So somatic tracking is a way to track and be aware of what's happening on the physical level. Because when you want to engage in a pattern that's negative, it's because you're in your head. You're not connected to your body. So the moment you stop, you pause, and you get in touch and connect your mind to the body, it's the most effective way to actually stop a pattern. And the way to do this is so simple. You stop, you pause, you feel what's happening inside your body on the sensation level. So when you do this and you feel, oh, I feel tension in my throat. I feel my heart beating. Oh, I feel, my legs are shaking. Right. And then once you get in touch with that, I'm telling you, if you do it for 30 to 60 seconds, all of a sudden, and every time I do this with people and I teach them this, they get clear, they feel peace, they feel freedom, because they're no longer fighting in their heads, because they're in their bodies now.
So how do they get over the idea of this? So they go through that motion. This is very interesting. I like that. Mel Robbins has a slight play on that with the count 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 kind of countdown on that. But I like this idea of what you said, is that you had an issue that's a mental issue. You have an issue that is, it's not, we said mental, or what was the other one? Mental or emotional. Thank you. Some sort of block, like I just had a block.
Or a
so
block,
you have a
type
mental
of
block, you have an emotional block, but what you're saying is you're actually solving it with a physical resolution, which is you're getting connected to your body, and doing that, then that's allowing you to reconcile those two things. That's a really interesting concept. I like that. The question is
Yeah, the body never lies. The body this keeps the score. If you
Yeah.
can connect to the somatic of the body, it'll actually allow you to move past it just by tracking it.
And
It's called
what gets you
somatic
to the point?
tracking.
So you
That's
go
it.
through all of that and you're like,
Yeah,
okay, I'm engaged, I'm this. And what gets you to stop saying, F it, I'm just going to do it anyways? Yeah.
it's choice. It's choice. Choosing the we all have a choice moment to moment, right? If in any given moment we choose the destructive behavior, then we have to be 100% responsible for the results and the outcomes and the impact that happens. There were so many times in my life where I intentionally chose this destructive behavior, right? Knowing that there's a potential outcome that's going to be, massively impacted. And I was okay with that. And I did it without shame or guilt, because what spirals any addictive pattern, what fuels it the most, besides lying and secrecy, is shame. So the moment you judge something as bad and you feel bad about it, right? It has the power over you, and you continue that spiral. Whether it's smoking, because smoking is not healthy, but there's nothing wrong with smoking unless you actually judge it as wrong. If you have a belief and a judgment that smoking is bad, internally you're actually saying to your subconscious mind that I am bad for smoking. That's the deep underlying challenge, cause, right? Because some people might smoke once a month, right? But if they did it and then they say this is bad,
Yep.
they're telling themselves that I'm bad. And so that creates, I might as well just keep smoking. I'm going to smoke every day now, or I'm going to smoke every hour because I'm a bad person for doing this. So dismantling that belief system, the problem isn't the substance, it's the
Do you think
belief
it's also
that you
the
have
belief
about the
around
substance.
that they've been programmed that smoking is addictive, and so therefore they believe it's addictive? I used to smoke, and I smoked like a pack a day. Like I used to, well, maybe a half a pack,
Yeah.
but whatever. And then one
Yeah.
day
Yeah.
I just decided to quit, and I just stopped, and I didn't have any strategy at all. It was probably motivation. I wanted to date this one girl that she didn't smoke and she didn't like smokers. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to stop smoking. And I just never started it again because I just didn't have a desire. And I think it was also environmentally as well, because I think, like a year later or two, I think they just stopped smoking inside. And the only way you could tolerate being in like a pub or something is if you were smoking, because the air was just intolerable. And so getting rid of that inside made it a lot easier to quit too.
Yeah.
So the idea is with that is, do you think that the connection to the environment and the environment telling you what you're doing is addictive, so therefore it's okay to be addictive? And second of all, the environment having availability of what you're looking for and promoting whatever you're doing, is that also something that feeds into it?
Yeah, the environment is 100% absolutely a factor that fuels an addictive pattern. Who you hang around, where you're at, location, bar, whatever it might be. Absolutely. I will say, and I'm going to go back to your point because it was a good point on nicotine or smoking. It is addictive, absolutely addictive. And so saying like it's not healthy to do that behavior. But again, I'm going to go back to what I said because I just want to make sure it's clear, is that it doesn't matter what it is. I was eating a jar of peanut butter, right, in 7 minutes. I'm not kidding you. It didn't matter what the substance was, because that's not the issue. The issue is the mindset that you have around the substance, right, and the belief system and the underlying cause of that, right? But in terms of environment, it's absolutely influential, right? What I will say though, I do not believe that it's not all or nothing. So someone that, and I know many people that say I'm not, I'm abstinent from XYZ, or I'm alcohol free for 2 years. I do not believe in all or nothing. All or nothing fuels addiction and creates resistance. Anytime you're in resistance, you are not in control. You are not free. You are a captive and a slave to that belief system that's set, that you're telling yourself that you cannot have this.
So flesh that out a little bit more, because I think that's
a
really interesting point. So it's that zero-sum game kind of a thing that either you're winning or it's winning. So what does if it's not that, what is it? So what does that mean? Describe
It's
that to
freedom,
me.
freedom of choice, right? Abundance is that there's enough. And I had to go through this in 2015 or 14 when I was in heavy periods of binging and purging and bulimia 4 or 5 times a day. I did a session with this coach. This was fascinating. I just found this coach online, and he started shifting my belief system around abundance and scarcity. I had no idea I was living in scarcity around food. I remember going into a Subway, and it's funny because my son and I joke about this every time I go to Subway. Uh, I couldn't just buy one cookie. I had to buy 12 and eat them in 7 minutes, right? Because the belief and the mindset is there's not enough cookies. So the moment I started to actually shift that, was when I was challenged to just get one. Can I have one? Can I sit down? Can I eat it? Can I enjoy it? Can I be present with it? And then if I want to choose to have a second one, it's okay to do that. It's normal. So then I go up and have a second, I go pay for it. Right. So this whole idea around abundance, right? So anyone that cuts off alcohol, it's no different. Anyone that cuts off drugs, marijuana, anything that they believe is bad, it's not bad unless you make it bad. But what if you could just have uh, an amount that is actually healthy, that's not overdosing or all this amount? What if you could have one drink? Because if you can't have one drink, you're still in scarcity. You can't have one, meaning you haven't really resolved the deeper lining issues on a somatic level that's repressed deep down inside. And until you do that, it will be very difficult to just have one. So, of course, it makes sense why people, and I get it, go all or nothing. But remember, the all or nothing
Yeah, I
is
guess
what
because
fuels an
if
addictive
you
mindset.
crest into the all or nothing game, that would mean that if you do break that barrier, you're now in the all game, not the nothing game anymore. And that puts you in a really bad situation.
Exactly.
Yeah, I could see that.
Oh yeah. Yeah, especially, entrepreneurs. I'll even speak for myself. Like, that all or nothing is hard to break, but it's simple to break. Right? I literally have to break that pattern, that mindset every day at some point by choosing one. That this is enough. That this one thing is enough. Whether it's cookie or whether it's business or whatever it is, because ultimately it comes down to the root of it, which we're all human, is I'm enough. I don't need more. I don't need, to have the perfect video to launch in order for it to look good in front of an audience. This is enough. This is enough. Just me shooting, going live is enough.
Yeah, I like
right?
that.
Because I'm enough. Because you're enough.
Are there any situations,
down to that.
I'm thinking things like heroin or some of these other things where it needs to be a zero-sum game?
That's a good question. It does initially for detoxification purposes. The interesting thing is the same dopamine effect that you get from heroin is what you
So
get
you're doing
from
a find and replace. Yeah.
So if one learns how to transition the same joy, the bliss, these ignited feelings and shift that into something that's healthy, like we talked about, then they'll naturally have a desire to never want to go back to that.
I was 240 pounds before I started Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and I'm down to 175, 185, just depends on the week or whatever. And so I made a huge change. And also back then I used to drink like a fish. Like a fish. I mean, I'd go out and the night would start and end with just a ridiculous amount of alcohol. But I know now, today, is that I've replaced it with jiu-jitsu to a point. And is there moments that I could relapse on that one? 100%. I like the idea of saying that rather than trying to not relapse and do the zero-sum game, is saying, okay, try to win at one and go back to zero. And then win at one and go back to, you don't have to go to 100. Just win at one and go back to zero. And if you build that resilience at that one, then you're good. Okay, go back to zero again.
That's it.
Yeah, I like that.
You're building self-confidence in yourself. You're actually building your belief system that you actually can trust yourself. because that's all it comes down to is do you trust yourself to have one? And then when you do, it's like, wow, I trust myself. Oh, I can have two. I trust myself. The conditioning of, other programs, other things, the society has conditioned us that it's black or white, that I have to be alcohol free. It's not your fault. It's not my fault. But there is another way to move past that.
So you talk about the big three. We talk about substance abuse. We've talked about food. Let's talk about sex for a bit, because that one's an interesting one to me, because I'm very curious as to what do you call a healthy addiction? What do you call an unhealthy addiction? And anything in that categories, whether it's sex, porn, whatever else exists in that space. Talk to me a little bit about that side.
Yeah. Listen, I'll say this, is that in terms of sex, porn, whatever it is, there's something that we get from it. There's that dopamine hit. Again, the same dopamine hit as in the other, any type of addiction. Where it becomes unhealthy is when shame and guilt kick in. That's it. When you feel bad about it and it impacts you and it impacts your work,
so how would that present itself? Give me some examples. Just like how the shame or the guilt shows up. What does a presentation like that look like?
Yeah. So let's say somebody is, they're a love addict or a sex addict, and, every single day they have to hook up with somebody, right? There we go. There we go. Let's say that they had to, right? And again, I'm going to go back to what I just said. It's they have to. It's the mindset that they have to. But if they're not aware of the mindset that they have to, then it's unconscious. That's called a shadow, and that shadow is actually controlling them. So these parts of us that we hide, repress, and deny, these are called shadows, right? If we repress the thought that we have to, we're not even conscious of it, then it has all the control over us. So where it becomes very constructive, and I've seen this before, is somebody has porn on, all day long, right? And they're watching it while they're on Zoom meetings. Again, that's a very rarity, but it doesn't matter whether it's that or hooking up with someone once a day. If the thought is I have to, right? And you haven't actually dismantled that mindset or investigated the belief system and questioned it, then it's going to have control always. And then the shame spiral kicks in, where it's like, I feel bad about it, so I might as well keep doing it because I feel so bad. And nobody knows about it. I feel alone. So I'm just going to keep doing it more because nobody knows. And it feels so good to do it by myself. So I'm going to keep doing it by myself because it's kind of like I get something from that. We always get something from it. The behaviors we do, we always get something. There's always a positive reinforcement.
Do you think that those addictions typically stimulate short-term positive reinforcements rather than long-term things? And that might be one of those things that would differentiate an addiction to somebody who's just committed to something? Yeah.
It's all short-term. Yeah. It's the short-term reward for 6 seconds, for 20 seconds. And then the long-term is not even a focus or a vision, right? So let me give you an example. 2015, I was legally blind, couldn't see contacts, couldn't see glasses. I had an eye disease called keratoconus. And I actually went on disability for 2 years, sat on the couch, got depressed. My kids walk up to me, they tap on my shoulders and they say, Daddy, wake up. I can't wake up. And there's a part of me that feels so much shame and guilt because I'm not showing up as a dad. And then there's another part of me that's like, I want to change. I want to do something different. I don't want to be this way anymore. I want to move past this. So I call it the 1%. 51% of more of me, after 20 years of this devastation, wanted to change more than the 49. It was always reverse. So all I needed in that moment was that 1% wanting more to change than not, the desire, and live vision focus driven, living the desire of what I wanted, because most people are stuck where they are in their addictive pattern because they focus on where they are and not what they want. The moment you switch that and shift your focus on what you want, even if it's that 1%, then possibility opens up. Then the doors open up, right? I went to like 6 or 7 different, doctors after that, and try to advocate to, like, how do I get to the best treatment center in the country with my insurance? And I advocated for myself rather than being thrown into rehabs, 12 steps for 15 years. I decided, because of that 1%, then it became 2%, and I get momentum, and I became 10%. Now I was 100% all in. The moment I got into my last treatment center in 2016, Steve, it rocked me. I was so ready to heal, so ready to change, because I just built that momentum off decisions, micro decisions I made every moment.
Yeah, that's the domino effect of the idea that you could have a domino that's very small, and it could knock over the next domino that's twice its size, which could knock over the next domino that's twice its size.
Right.
And because it creates this inertia of small decisioning to make massive impact. And I think that is so incredibly important when you're fueling your direction, is to be able to start winning at a small basis. But I think when you were talking about it, the first is that idea to go from the 51% of negative to 51% of positive, and in that crossover. This is the thing that everybody tries to figure out. This is like the one thing that everybody says is like, what is that inception point that takes you from being 49 positive to 51 negative to cross over the 50-50 and cross over in the moment of action? Every interview I've gone through, people are trying to figure out, what does that inception point look like? Why does that happen?
Conscious choice. And it's always driven by pain. The pain of where you are. So the moment pain comes up, right, and you feel these deep levels of pain, right, and you no longer want to feel the pain, because the pain drives us to move forward, right? It's like a man running out of a burning building. Why does he run out of a burning building? Because he's going to die. He's like, holy shit, like I'm in so much pain. I'm going to be in so much pain, right? So what drives us to move forward always is pain. So when I say conscious choice, I made a conscious choice because I felt the pain. And I could have for 2 years been on disability and just sat on the couch and stayed depressed and still acted in my behavior. But I was sick and freaking tired of doing that for 15 years. And when I saw on the eyes of my kids, like looking at me, I didn't want to be that dad anymore. And that was the pain point. And it's always driven off pain. So that's where it starts. And then, like you said, it's the micro decisions. It's not some big giant decision. I didn't decide to unlock all these levels of freedom. I had no idea they existed. Every level of freedom that I ever created in my life was simply from one decision, always ignited from pain. Because at every level that you get to a peak, there's another pit.
Yeah.
There's another level of darkness, right? And then you go back into this pain. And then you decide, what do I want? What's the desire? And then you go to that direction driven from the micro decision you made.
You talk about
pain.
this on your healyouraddiction.com website, and you go through a couple different summits. And I think the one that we're sort of talking a little bit about is that first summit, that Awaken Summit. And is that kind of where we're kind of sitting as we walk through this process?
100%. Yeah. So over 15 years of my struggles, just to give some quick context, the Freedom for Life program was created really for my last 8 years of healing, breaking free, and unlocking that I didn't know existed, all these levels of freedom. And the first step to that, and so anyway, I put it into a program that if I were to go through this 9 years ago when I was struggling for 15 years, this is exactly what I would have needed, and this is how I was born. So the first part of that is becoming awakened by confronting your current reality and the truth. Where am I? What am I avoiding? What am I hiding? Where am I lying? What am I lying? Who am I lying to? And confronting that, and confronting your belief system, all the beliefs that you're carrying currently that's keeping you where you are, right? And then starting to actually dismantle them inside of that. And instantly, because of the dismantling, someone might experience freedom.
Identification, and then looking what needs to be deconstructed. Is that what you're saying? Yeah. And once you...
Yeah, that's it. Truth. It's exposing. It's all exposure of truth.
If you're going to look at a wound, you got to expose the wound and get into there and really kind of understand what's going on. identify, figure out what the parts are missing, what are the parts are still there, and then figure out. So what's the next step after you've gone through that process?
Yeah, it's becoming a rebirth man, I call it. Meaning, once you've confronted all this, now it's time to release it, right? Intentionally, consciously, right? Because if you want to move forward, you have to clean it all out, clean out the garbage, clean out the emotional baggage. So there's an entire process that we do around that, whether it's in person or whether it's online, to awaken that rebirth man or that rebirth person. And then it becomes a physical, mental, and emotional and spiritual detox, where it opens up this gap where there's space just to be. It's like you've released all this, and then you're just in this pocket of, wow, where am I now?
When you have a gap,
it opens up this gap.
Gaps, as a business guy, the first thing you do when you have gaps always get filled, right? You're like, I got a gap, I'm going to fill the gap. In rugby, when there's a gap, you shoot the gap, right? So what happens when you sit there with that gap? And now you're looking at going, what do I do?
Right. Well, you just be in it. So like I'll put guys through 24 hours of being in the woods and being with themselves in this space. Literally, they're by themselves. There's no phone. They're just with themselves. And the first couple hours, it's scary as hell. But after, 10 hours plus with yourself, there's a sense of, I didn't know this was available. Freedom, possibility opens up, desire opens up. Because what needs to happen is for a man to shift and transform, he must have clear desires of what he wants, and it can't come from me. I'm not a savior. I don't have the answers. He must have the answers. And in that gap, in that space, everything comes out, all the desires, because he's released all that crap that was there.
Other desires that are non-productive come out at that moment, or do they typically productive desires that come out? Yeah.
Everything's welcome. Yeah. I mean, I've had desires of having 3, 4, 5 women, come up. Every time I've done this, I've done 10-day Vipassana retreats, silent meditation, no talking, 10 hours a day of meditation. I've done multiple of those. And every time I do them, everything comes up. Every desire, every want, every ego, everything comes up, right? And you just acknowledge it and you welcome it, and then you let it go.
The idea of acknowledging that it's there, I think, there's a lot of power in that, because I think if you kind of pretend that doesn't exist, you pretend that thought's not in your brain, I think you're not giving it credibility, and that's giving it control. Yeah. Yeah.
And you're denying being human.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Totally. I wonder if AI could get addicted. That's just a thought that I just had. So once we go through the process and you go through
that's causing another addiction, by the way. AI is
there's
ChatGPT.
So many technical. That's the one thing you hit. You said the big 3. I would put the big 4, and I would probably throw technology as a fourth one.
Technology, probably, especially in my son's generation. He's 15. I mean, I'm just like, dude, like I want you to be present right now. We're walking in the grocery store. It's like, it's becoming.
I think when you're in an ethereal space where you can be whatever you want to be, and if there's judgment, you just go to another chat or whatever. I think it's a hard thing to fight when you look at the reality and the hard truths of we'll call it the non-digital space that we live in. IRL is what they call it in real life. And so I think that's a difficult one. But once you've gone through and you've said, okay, I've got these things, I've identified them, and I'm now releasing them out, and I've said, I've acknowledged them, it's gone. Now what happens next?
Healing becomes available. Healing everything, all the suppressed emotions, all the things stored in the body for the last 20, 30, 40 years of your life. There's space to heal those things, and they happen very quickly. I've got missions that I take people through that they do inner work themselves to heal relationships, heal themselves. But most importantly, it's really about healing your past to move forward, right? There's a lot of somatic practices, shadow work practices, embodiment practice to get into your body at that point to heal whatever is ready to move out without forcing it through these practices. And it's a beautiful thing to be able to witness and have people in my programs go through these practices. A lot of it's breath work, nice. A lot of it's embodiment.
And once they've
work.
Gone through the healing process of that, they're like, okay, I'm done. I'm out. We're good.
Well, that's what I had thought, right? Because again, I'd gone through these journeys over 8 years, and it's like, okay, oh, this is here. This is available. For me, this was an interesting one. 2018 was about rebuilding my identity and my operating system, basically upgrading my operating system. Basically, what that means is once you've let these things go, it's like, who am I? It opens up the question of who am I? Like, who am I? Well, these are your core values. This is the vision that you have. This is your operating system, right? These are the beliefs that you're taking on, that you're attaining. This is you. This is your passions. This is your gifts. Let's use them in the workplace. Let's use them at home. Oh, I didn't even know that this was my gifts. Yeah, let's use them. So that's what it's about. It's about reprogramming a new operating system. And
how much is retention of the old versus injection to something that's new?
In terms of
the identity is a really interesting thing, because I always believe that, when you form a habit, your habits create your identity, whether you like it or not, because people would say, oh, that guy would never do that. That's how he is. Or that guy would always do that. That's how he is. And that's sort of the identity, whether that's how you get identified externally or internally. I think that's interesting that you use the word identity. And I really kind of hone in on that. So talk to me a little bit about how much are you carrying forward from your old identity, or are you just completely reshaping it?
The more that you know who you are, the more that your identity is formed. Right. And I'm talking, your personality, know your emotional intelligence, knowing every single gift that you have, your unique gifts that you bring to the world. The moment you acknowledge them, you do an exercise around them, you can own them as as part of who you are, the makeup of who you are. And that shapes your current new belief system. So I'm not saying like, let's create a belief system. No, let's ignite all the ways of being that you are naturally, that you've lost in touch, that you've repressed. Let's operate from there, and your belief system will follow.
I like that. Yeah, no, it's a very interesting exercise to go through, for sure.
So there's no like going to the past. It's not like, does that show up again? No, because you get to own your ways of being. You get to own your passions, and you get to actually live your passions that you didn't even know you had.
Does that mean I'm going to
moment to moment, day to day? Your operating system was already there, was already always
so
there.
You've gone through this thing, and you've gone through and rebuilt your operating system. You've now created the identity, because you own that identity. You're not being owned in that identity. Now I say, am I good? Am I ready to go? Am I rock and roll?
Oof. Yeah. Well, you could be, but interesting enough, a man can go through all these journeys, or a woman, but yet they're not free in their finances, right? They might be owed money and taxes. They might have a business that's about to go under. They're not free in their relationships. They're about to get a divorce, and they're showing up like an a-hole, right? How they're showing up, or their kids might hate them, right? I don't know, their health. Maybe they're not working out, and they have terrible health, and they're obese and they're overweight. So this is about attaining total freedom in all domains of life. Freedom in relationships, freedom in your energy, in your time, in your spirituality, in your mindset, in your emotional state, freedom in physical health, your well-being, attaining what I call the 10 freedoms, including location freedom and time freedom.
We haven't covered that one before in the preamble, so I'd be interested to understand what that means. So we've got so many things that we're talking about. So you get to that conscious man level.
I know.
Then we're kind of moving into the next element, and we're saying that at this point, now we can start to address the things that are the external, either challenges or problems, and we can address it in a different way, because we've sort of reprogrammed our identity that if you have that tax problem, or if you have that, impending divorce, you can actually start to attack that with clarity and start to solve that, because you've now built yourself in a way that can be better suited for success.
Yeah, it's basically I take the people I work with through 90 days of hitting a target. So we go through all domains of life, and if life were ideal in 12 months, which I call the impossible game, what would that look like? What takes 5 years you do in a year, and then we chunk that down to 90 days, and in that 90 days, basically, what in all domains, what could we reach as a target that who we are today is not possible? The current identity that we currently have and belief system and habits and routines. So we're going through, okay, I want to be married, right? The who you are today is not possible. So we have to free the mindsets and the behaviors and attain new ones to achieve these outcomes in 90 days. And that's what
I always love
to summarize what that's all
90
about.
days, because I think anything that's longer than that, I think if you read Jay Papasan's book, The One Thing, and he talks about, you can form a habit. People always say, oh, everything's formed in 21 days. He's like, that's a myth. That is a myth. And I think he starts talking about 66 days is sort of when the habit starts to form. And so the idea of 90 days is you're pushing past that habit forming moment to, again, I think when a habit forms, then identity, as you talk about, starts to really present itself. It becomes part of you rather than just something that you do.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's such a good point. Yeah, I agree with that. 90 days, I've tested less, but a true outcome that normally would take a year to do in 90 days is
now the last step is
doable.
the legacy man that you talk about. I want to sort of hit, what does that mean to be a legacy man?
Yeah. Let me skip back to there's Summit 6, which is the connected man. Let's go through that. So I believe I talked about that yet. So it's just getting connected to yourself. So what happens on this journey is as you're going through it, sometimes I've seen it, and it happened to me many times, is I lost touch with me, connecting with me. Especially as you hit these business targets, these relationship targets, you hit freedom, and you all of a sudden you're from scarcity to abundance, right? What happens is some people lose touch with themselves. So it's about reigniting connection and radical self-love with you. And so that's an important phase as well. Falling in love with you in the process and in the journey, and not losing yourself. The final one is what I call legacy man. And that's simply living purpose driven and attaining a life of meaning giving back and meaning something that's meaningful, right? And so it could be anything. Most people think they have to wait until a certain age to actually live a meaningful life or live their purpose. Or what does purpose even mean? It's confusing, right? Well, if you put in a jar and you answer the question, if you had an unlimited amount of money and you put in a jar 5 things, you write on a note and you say, these are the 5 things, if I had limited money, these are the 5 things that'd be meaningful to me. And if you just pick one out a month and you do it, you're living a meaningful life. Like, you don't have to wait till Summit 7. We go a lot more in depth on this. It's a whole phase, 30 days. But I'm just saying, no one has to wait to live purpose driven. And it's not complicated. Like, everyone thinks it's so complicated. No, it's not. What's meaningful to you?
There's Jesse Yitzler talks a little bit about the idea of doing one major thing every year that defines that year. And I think that's such a great idea. Is that you said that's the year that I started a podcast. That's the year that I learned how to scuba dive, or whatever the thing it is that you're looking at doing. You make that the year, and then making some micro wins. And every month it's like, this is the year that this is the month that I'm doing this. This is the month that I'm doing, and having those wins. Really, I think that's huge. I think I love that. I love winning. I think the idea of always focusing on a win and building off of that it gives you, no matter how small it is.
Love that.
I think for some people who are deep in the dark of wherever they are, just getting out of bed is a win. And, and then some people who are, on the pinnacle of Mount Everest, and the win is actually cresting the top with all their fingers intact. Right. So.
Totally. Yeah. That's it. I love your point about winning. It's like, how can I win in this moment? How can I make a win in this team conversation? How can I win? How can we win together?
Yeah.
Right.
And the win doesn't have to be against
everything's
something.
about
I think
winning.
the win can be against the odd, right? The thing that you are against is that what you're winning. So if it's against, the taxes thing, you've paid off your taxes, or the thing is against the weight thing, you're losing weight. So it's not necessarily against the individual. It's against the odd that you're going against.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Man,
Totally.
Patrick,
Love
I
that.
could talk to you
Yeah.
for days and days and days, my friend. And for people to get a hold of you, the easiest way to
So
find
good.
you is at the healyouraddiction.com website. Is that correct?
Yeah, if there's someone struggling with any addictive pattern whatsoever, there you can click on that page, healyouraddiction.com. There's also a WhatsApp circle if you want to send me a message personally on there. Or, like we spoke about, I work with individuals who want to perform at a higher level, or just companies, and train them with emotional intelligence as well to perform better, be more effective. Or if anyone wants to be more effective at what they do, my other website's
I love it. You've got the
limitlessimpactgroup.com. They
ability to
can
be
check
able
that
to
out as well.
resolve, and then the ability to be able to build. And I think those are two amazing things to put together. Patrick, it's
Yeah,
been an absolute
totally.
pleasure.
Yeah,
Thank you for joining us today. I really appreciate it. And guys, this is the
likewise.
money. This is the mindset. This is the mentoring podcast. We'll see you on the next one.